everyone, and welcome back to the Healing Entrepreneur podcast. I am your host, Rowana Abbensetts-Dobson, and I wanted to do an episode today that is more about my own personal journey with entrepreneurship and specifically identifying myself as a spiritual entrepreneur and a healing entrepreneur and what that means to me. So it has been a very long journey in entrepreneurship for me, and I didn't necessarily know that this was the path that I was going to take. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my story and how I came to this moment now where I'm doing the Healing Entrepreneur podcast and, just share some gems of knowledge of what I have experienced over the years and how I found this path. So I hope you enjoy. So let me start by saying I never knew that I would be an entrepreneur, but it makes perfect sense given what I wanted out of life. I always wanted to be creative as a living. I wanted to have a family and I wanted to have a flexible schedule so that I could be available for my family. Growing up, both of my parents often worked outside of the home, and I just wanted to do things differently for my kids and be, at home and have that flexible career. So, that was one of the major perks of entrepreneurship to me. And also, when I entered the workforce, I realized that 9 to 5 life wasn't necessarily for me. I would always say, oh my gosh, it's just this job, it's just this place, or the type of job, or it was my boss, or the people, or something. But it was just actually that I was overwhelmed. I was dealing with depression and anxiety off and on, and I was finding it hard to maintain adequate self-care in those spaces, and also dealing with, a lack of support in many cases from management or people that were supposed to be mentors, guiding me in the space. So that's another reason why I'm very passionate about mentorship, and I try to provide that at Spoken Black Girl as well. When I was 17, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. And I had no idea how this diagnosis would impact my career. For one thing, it made it a lot more challenging to be in very demanding environments. And I found myself having a lot of anxiety at work as a Black woman, dealing with microaggressions and also just trying to be the approachable and nice Black woman who is not thought of as aggressive. All of that takes energy, and it was exhausting for me. So that was another reason why I decided to leave that space and work from home. Now there are so many articles out about how Black women are working from home, and it is really lessening the amount of microaggressions and just BS in general that Black women put up with at work. So I like to think that I was one of the first people on that wave because I started working from home and being a full-time entrepreneur in about 2018 is when I started Spoken Black Girl, which we all know and love today. One major lesson I had to learn going into entrepreneurship was to create boundaries and maintain those boundaries and speak up for myself. I think that coming from the nonprofit publishing space that I was in before, often I was compromising my boundaries because, like I said, I wanted to be perceived as nice and also someone that goes above and beyond in order to do their job well. And, even doing things like going to the office happy hour, however often that is, rather than going home because you're exhausted and you're an introvert and you just want to chill, read, watch Netflix, and, be with your loved ones. But I often, when I was in the office, I would compromise that so that I could be, fit in with the company culture. And I think that I brought that into entrepreneurship, at least in the beginning, because it was really people pleasing was what I was doing. And imagine now you are starting to collaborate with different brands and different voices, and you are just trying to please everyone, and you don't have those boundaries in place. It can get very stressful and exhausting very quickly. So that was one of my first major lessons of entrepreneurship, was to create your boundaries, think about when you are going to engage in work, what you're going to do, and what is actually a good match for you in terms of clients and projects, rather than taking anything because it's what has come across your desk, or because you want to look good to other people. So, definitely keeping that inner conversation going with yourself is something that I highly recommend. I think about my favorite tools, which are journaling, meditation, prayer, therapy. All of these things are ways that we can deepen our connection with our own intuition and, carry that into our everyday lives. And everyone who loves you and really cares about you will not question your boundaries or try to push you past what you feel is good for you. So, yeah, that would be my one of my first tips for entrepreneurs, especially if you are someone who is a sensitive person, a neurotypical person, um, and you are trying to navigate this space while still taking care of yourself. Boundaries is, the number one thing that we want to be setting with other people. Well, I first really started dealing with anxiety and depression when I was in college, and that was the first time that I really sought out therapy. I remember even when I got diagnosed, I had to leave my neighborhood, which was a predominantly Black neighborhood, in order to go see a, psychiatrist. And then when I got to college, they had the health and wellness center and they had therapists there. And I was so fortunate to be connected with a therapist. She was a white woman, and but she was a very empathetic person. So it was like, even though I sometimes had to explain my experiences as a Black woman, as an Afro-Caribbean woman, and explain my background and everything like that, it also it was still a great experience, and she definitely taught me a lot about journaling, affirmations, and a lot of the stuff that I share now with other people. So when I first graduated from college, I had so many different jobs in the first few years of my 20s, from being a sales associate at Brooklyn Industries to an assistant at a literary scouting firm, which I could talk about more later what that all involves. I was a Read Alliance intern, so I was helping kids learn to read in school and promoting literacy. Um, And, I really started to gravitate towards the nonprofit world because I've always just wanted to help other people. And also the publishing space because I'm a writer naturally and a storyteller and someone who wanted to create that space for my voice and others. So that kind of has led my career so far. But I found that a lot of the spaces that I thought were going to be dedicated to diversity, going to be opening and welcoming to the voices of Black women, often were not. Or that was what they were showing on the outside of the organization, but not what was actively happening on the inside. Like, you know, we need diversity at all levels in all of the spaces of the organization, not just taking advantage of, Black people and writers and creatives to seem diverse on the outside and not really valuing those people's lives in various ways, and really setting it up to nourish those communities and those people. So I found that hypocrisy a little bit hard to sit with. So that was being an entrepreneur who deals with depression can often look like wearing so many hats, playing so many roles, and needing to rest, but not wanting to let other people down. It's also a challenge because you have to know what your capacity is and what you can handle because you're not a machine. And I think that that is where the spiritual entrepreneur aspect comes in because I really try to move by my intuition, by my energy levels. I try to be in flow rather than force. And along my journey, I found that a lot of the advice that was being given on the internet was not really resonating with me individually because maybe it was looking at business in a very kind of cold, hands-off way, and that has never been the way that I operated my business, and I used to think that there was something wrong with me or that I just needed to change who I was in order to be an entrepreneur, and I realized that that is not true at all. And so, yeah, I want to share all of these lessons with you all.